I know is being a pundit these days is not enough anymore. If you want to be a political player in 2012, you need a PAC.
There had been an episode of the Colbert Report, and he had created a video, a fake ad, for a PAC as a way of making fun of political ads. After he had done that, he received a call from the network, Comedy Central, saying, "We loved your show last night. By the way, you should know you're not allowed to have a PAC." Colbert said, "Thank you, that's good to know," hung up the phone, turned to his staff and said, "What is a PAC? Why can't I have a PAC? Find me someone who knows about PACs." I received a call from someone who identified herself as the booker for the Colbert Report, and would I mind talking to her a little bit about political action committees, PACs, and how they worked. Eventually I got a call from Stephen Colbert, and we had another long conversation about PACs and how it worked and what corporate sponsorship meant. And at the end of all that, he said, "Would you mind saying this publicly, as in on air?" I said, "No, I'd be happy to."
But folks, I have clearly got to get a PAC. But again, I have no idea what PACs do. Here to tell us what they do is the former chairman of the Federal Election Commission and general counsel for the McCain campaign 08, Trevor Potter. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Potter.
So for the first appearance, I was just going out to explain why he had been told he couldn't have a corporate PAC and what could be done about it as a lawyer. So I went out and explained what a PAC was and why his corporate network would be concerned about him spending network money to create a PAC that was going to solicit from the general public. And he said, "Well, are there ways to do this? Could I have one in some different way?" And that started a conversation that went on for almost a year about how money in politics works. Part of the joy of working with Colbert is that as I would have these conversations, usually by phone, I could tell when he got really excited about something. And he would say, "Really? I could do that?" So as I'm explaining that the safest thing to do and what would make the corporation feel comfortable about this would be getting an advisory opinion from the FEC blessing him creating his own PAC, he said, "Really? How does that work? I could do that?" So we had this, ended up with a complete circus with him coming down to Washington, appearing before the Federal Election Commission, requesting his advisory opinion with me there representing him as his lawyer, the commissioners never having had a hearing like this, and ultimately getting the advisory opinion that I had advised him he would get. He then had shown how the system worked, and clearly was intrigued enough about money in politics to have some follow-up telephone conversations with me and say, "So how can I now start using this PAC? Who can contribute?" I explained to him that it was a federal PAC. It could give to candidates, but contributions to it were limited by law. And so in our conversations, he said, "But I thought there's all this big money out there and people can give unlimited amounts." And in fact, I was telling him that corporations can't give to his PAC, but just individuals. And so, of course, he said, "But I thought corporations were spending money and giving to PACs." And I said, "Well, that's different." Well, there's something called a super PAC.
What's a super PAC? Is that like a PAC that got bitten by a radioactive lobbyist?
I explained that there's a sort of magic wand you can wave that creates a super PAC, and it can spend unlimited amounts, but it can also take unlimited amounts, including from corporations.
Colbert Nation, are you ready for Colbert Super PAC?
So he creates his super PAC, and people continue to give, but not corporations. So again, conversations, how does this all work? How does corporate money really get into the system?
Mr. Trevor Potter. Trevor, nice to
And
see
so
you.
he then has me back on and says,
Now, Trevor, I've got all these people down at the bottom of the screen who've been giving me money, individual Americans. But I haven't gotten any of the big corporate money. That's why I have a super PAC. Why wouldn't a corporation give money?
and I explained that big corporations tend not to give directly to super PACs because they have shareholders and employees who might not be happy. And so then I explained that he could create a entity like a 501c4, an organization that exists to influence public policy and does not disclose its donors. And people could give to the C4, and the C4 could give to the super PAC.
So I can take secret donations of my C4 and give it to my supposedly transparent super PAC.
And it'll say given by your C4.
What is the difference between that and money laundering?
It's hard to say.
When the Colbert Report was explaining all this and he was creating his PAC and super PAC and C4, this was all cutting edge legal maneuvers. I knew it as an election lawyer and understood how it worked. Party lawyers knew it, but most of the country did not. Citizens United had said corporations can spend unlimited amounts in elections, but it had to be independent of parties and candidates, and it would be fully disclosed so that corporate shareholders would be able to object, and people who were viewing ads would understand who was paying for them. That, it was clear, was already something that political players, party committees, corporate interests could navigate around. But most people didn't know that yet. And so what Colbert did was explain it to the general public, take what insiders knew and show how it would work. Every year, Colbert would have one major subject or project during the course of his show. The year that I was on turned out to be his election year, his super PAC year. And so he created an image that would go over the fireplace on his set. And if you look at it, what you'll see, it's Colbert at the FEC with money coming out of his sleeve, and he's holding an FEC advisory opinion. And so this would hang for a year in his set at the Colbert Report after he had done this whole series of interviews on the super PAC. And then it would be replaced. And I got a call saying, would you like the painting that has been hanging over the fireplace? I said, sure, of course. I'd like it, we'd like it. And so we put it up at CLC. I hope Stephen remains active in talking about public issues, candidates, things that really matter in today's world. I'm sorry that the network is closing down the late night show, because I think his voice has been really important in helping people understand what's going on and put it in context.